Hey guys, it's Ian from the Gamers Gaiden, doing something a little bit special. I know I've been kind of absent with the bargain videos. As we've kind of mentioned, it's been a bit of a crazy month, so I thought what I would do is, since it is Halloween, which is one of my favorite holidays, or I'm going to be doing a couple of videos, a little bit of a, I guess, retrospective on a couple of games from the last 4 decades. I've got something lined up from the 80s this week, the 90s, from the aughts, and then the 10s. And yeah, so that's where we are. We've got this guy right now. Watching a couple more days, I'll have another one coming out from the 90s, and then next week we'll see the O's or the aughts, and finally ending up on Halloween with the 2010 Z. Actually, I think that one's the one that I'm doing for that block is actually this year, so it's kind of right near the end, but that's okay. Some of these are all over the place. But anyways, today, looking at the 80s, and I decided to do Hugo's House of Horrors. Some of you may know this, some of you may have no idea what this is. This is a point-and-click adventure game. Technically, it was released in 1990, developed late 80s. It does remind a lot of people of Maniac Mansion from 87, which the creator of Hugo's House of Horrors, David Gray, he has said on many occasions that in no way was this actually inspired by Maniac Mansion. It was Leisure Suit Larry that was the inspiration for this, of all things. If you've ever played Leisure Suit Larry or this, you are gonna probably not really be able to draw that many parallels other than the visual style. But that said, I went with Hugo instead of Maniac Mansion because this was, I think, the first PC game my family owned. When we got our first computer back in the early 90s, this was it. Shareware was a really big thing at the time. For anybody who has no idea what that was, it was discs. Sometimes they were the full game, sometimes they were a couple levels from a game. But yeah, honestly, I got them at, I think, the grocery store, and they were never more than $5. And yeah, that was a big exposure for me to PC gaming, was a lot of these really, really inexpensive shareware games. It was the first way I played Doom. It had about, I think, the first 10 levels, or the first section before you kind of got off of the space station. Or anyways, doesn't matter. First little section of Doom, I think the first little section of Wolfenstein, that kind of stuff. Like, it was great. But Hugo was the entire game. It was everything. So that was kind of neat. And my family and I would actually sit around the computer and play this together. I think this was the only game on the computer I've ever played with my entire family. I think this is the only game I've ever played with my entire family. So I do have a lot of, I guess, really fond memories of sitting around trying to solve the puzzles. We never finished it as a family back in the early 90s. Again, it kind of speaks to the games of the period, because yes, this is a point-and-click adventure game, but this is not similar to most of the point-and-click adventure games you might be familiar with. This is what is referred to as a text parser. I hadn't really heard that term until recently, but the idea behind this is that even though you control the movements of the character with the keyboard, you actually have to input commands. So it is constantly, like, if you want to pick something up, you have to type pick up whatever, and then it has various phrases that it has grouped into, these are what this means, like pick up, get, grab, that kind of stuff will all fall under the same category. And yeah, like, it's just, you're constantly typing in what to do, and it's interesting because you don't see a lot of gameplay like that anymore. You just don't. It's very, I guess, rudimentary, and even visually, it is a graphical game. It's not like a text adventure, but the graphics are very primitive. I mean, it was the late 80s, so it's as good as it could be, I guess. Anyways, we're not gonna get hung up on that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There are a couple of sections where you have to pre-type something. You'll have to pre-type something before you go into a room because the action has to happen right away, or else you die. There's not a whole lot of ways you can mess up in this game. I think there's only about 5 or 6 ways that you can die, which is kind of neat and nice too. That I think that's one of the more positive things about playing this with your family, is that you can sit down around the keyboard. You can all kind of throw out ideas, unless you know exactly what you're doing. It's constantly like, oh, try this, or oh, maybe this, or does this work with this? A lot of that kind of stuff. It is a lot of fun. I will say that I think I finished it in about 30 minutes, but I also knew what I was doing. Not immediately, but it had been almost 30 years since I had played this. So a little while, but maybe 25. Anyways, doesn't matter. It had been a long time. So yeah, I still had fun. I finished it in about half an hour. Because there was a couple of things that I just didn't remember. And there are a few sections where you actually have to be careful with the controls, which is a little bit frustrating because the controls are kind of floaty. It's not very precise. So that can be frustrating. But the nice thing is there is a save feature. You can save anywhere at any point. So, you just kind of, when you discover a new room, make sure you're safe, save, continue on. It's not too ridiculous that way. And like I said, there's only, I want to say 5 or 6 things that actually will end the game for you. Beyond that, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't let you progress without the proper item. You can't get all the way to the end and realize, oh no, I didn't pick up thing in room 1. I'm never going to finish this. Fortunately, it isn't like that. You can always go back. You can always discover something else if you hadn't your first walkthrough. So I thought that was kind of fun. So ultimately, you're probably looking at, if you've never played this before, you might get an hour or 2 out of it because you're exploring the different rooms and looking around. How does this stand up after almost 30 years? It's not bad. I did have fun with it. Is it scary? No. Is it thematically appropriate for Halloween? Yeah, absolutely. You're exploring a creepy house owned by a mad scientist who has kidnapped your girlfriend. So, yeah, absolutely. It has vampires and werewolves and mad scientists, who I already mentioned, and crazy dogs and vampire bats and a wizard on a lake, a mummy. What more could you want? So, should you try this out? Yes. Yes, 100 times yes. The reason being, this is free. I found this on an abandonware website and played it in a browser. You can download it if you want to, but I played it in browser for no cost. And I think that's where this has a little bit of leverage over Maniac Mansion, even though technically, yes, Maniac Mansion is the more superior game, and if you've got the means to, I would download it and play it. Yeah, it's probably going to run you like $10 or $20, but Maniac Mansion is considerably better. The Scum engine, which JC and I talk about in our actually next episode, it's great. It really was designed for point-and-click adventure games, and you're not going to have, or at least I don't think there's a better system for that genre. So, yeah. But for free, to play an old text parser, which nobody really makes any more at all, yeah, go play this. Just type in Hugo's House of Horrors, Abandonware, and you will find it. So, take 20 minutes out of your day. Give it a shot. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. That's it for me for this week. Or that's it for me this episode, I should say. I will be back in a couple of days talking about something a little spooky from the 90s. That one, I remember it being scary. We'll see if it is still scary. And incredibly underappreciated. If you have any ideas of what you think it might be between 91 and 2000, let me know in the comments below. And I will catch you in a couple days.